You're listening to the Break Podcast powered by Career Cloud.
Hi, welcome back to the Break Podcast on Career Cloud Radio. I'm your host, Michael Garden. I talk a lot about risk and uncertainty, but one of the most counterintuitive lessons I learned from my time in finance, entrepreneurship, and design is that there's an upside to uncertainty. Sometimes chance encounters we never would have expected break our path and launch us in a better direction. These are our happy accidents. Dennis Geelen is an accidental solopreneur. After being laid off from his corporate job in 2018, he decided to bet on himself and launched a business consulting company called Zero In. Through Zero In, Dennis helped companies solve indifference by implementing strategies to build more customer-centric and innovative organizations. Author of the best-selling book, The Zero In Formula, Dennis has worked with companies in several industries, spoken at countless events, conferences, workshops, webinars, and with dozens of guest appearances on international podcasts. And now, Dennis also helps other solopreneurs get started with his latest book, The Accidental Solopreneur, and online courses, The Solopreneur Playbook, providing strategies and tactics for success. Dennis is also the author of the Happy Accidents weekly newsletter and co-founder of the Solo Creator Summit. Dennis and I get into all the accidents that happen and how they can propel us to new heights. I learned a ton from Dennis, and I think this is just an absolute banger of an episode. So I really hope you enjoy my podcast episode with Dennis Geelen. Hey, Career Breakers, if you're digging this episode with Dennis the way I am and want to know a little bit more about this area of solopreneurship, check out Dennis's Solo Creator Summit. It's a totally free online virtual event to attend. It's got great speakers and on topics of marketing, entrepreneurship, branding, distribution, content, and everything that you need to get your own mini business launched online. I hope to see you there. If you want to find out more, go to solocreatorsummit.com, and the event is September 20th and 21st. Again, hope to see you there. Dennis, welcome to the break. So happy to have you and finish out our week on a Friday here.
Yeah, awesome to be here.
As I was telling you right before the show started, just to tee this up for people, I do a lot of thinking about this word balance. And I think, we have balance between sort of control and surrender, between work and play, focus and openness, knowing and not knowing, this balance between what we know and what we don't know. We have to set our intention, we have to take action, but also be open, for help from areas we can't predict. And you're all about kind of leaning into this idea of happy accidents and being accidental. So I think that this topic really piques my interest. And I think it's something that people have to really think about how they can cultivate this more. You say most success can actually be traced back to a happy accident. Can you explain what you mean by that?
Yeah. Basically, the premise there is we plan. That's our nature. We set goals. This is what we're told to do. Like, what are your 1-year plans? What are your 3-year plans? How are you going to get that? Map it out. What's that look like? And almost nothing goes to plan.
Yeah.
Right. Yet we do it. It makes sense. You should have a plan. I'm not saying don't have one. But while you're going through the process of executing that plan, you have to be open to what actually happens, what opportunities are actually coming your way. And if you look at most of these success stories, and I've been looking at tons of them because of the newsletter that I write, what ends up happening is something completely unexpected falls in the person's lap. A chance encounter, some sort of accidental discovery, some sort of serendipitous moment that wasn't in their plan, but the person recognized it and then capitalized on it. So that's why I say most success can be traced back to a happy accident. It's not, I'm going to build the world's best vacuum and here's what's going to happen over the next 5 years and ta-da, I'm done. That's not what success stories generally look like.
So I got exposed to this concept. I didn't call it happy accidents at the time, but in my 20s, there's a famous quote from Mike Tyson, who is a great boxer, right? Like, everybody's got a plan till they get hit in the mouth. which makes so much sense. And then I was in the finance world, and I was like exposed to how much money and effort goes into predicting and measuring like future economic indicators and numbers and predicting the stock market and all this stuff. And never are they ever right? Ever. Yet we spend
look at the
much
weatherman.
money. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Weatherman is always wrong. Right.
Yeah. So I got, I start like in my 20s, I just started thinking about, well, how do you sort of be prepared for anything that can come, right? And there's this like upside and downside aspect to being resilient. And so I started like, basically like studying CrossFit, because CrossFit it's a fitness discipline where it's basically like you have to be ready for anything that gets thrown at you. You have to be a good cardio fitness and agility and all these types of things. And I just feel like that is where most people are sort of thrown off base. We think we can control so much more than we actually can.
Yeah.
And so where did you start thinking about this concept of accidents and accidental and being open to that?
It really started for me about 5 or 6 years ago. I was a follow the script guy. I think I need to have everything in my control. As long as I'm doing X, Y, Z, I'm comfortable, I'm safe, I'm happy.
Yeah.
So I was that follow the script guy. I didn't have entrepreneurial parents. So what was modeled for me was the typical American dream type thing, right? You go to school, you get your degree, you get a good job, you buy a house, you get married, you slowly work your way up the corporate ladder, you put some money away, and by the time you're 60, 65, you retire, ta-da, it works, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. It does work for most people. It's supposed to be safe, it's supposed to be comfortable. So that was me. Until I would say early 40s, maybe late 30s, I started to get a bit of an itch. I never had an entrepreneurial bone in my body until I started kind of plateauing. I'd done really well in my career, had the house, had the family, everything, and then kind of was like, that it? Is there more to life than? But I did anything because I was risk averse. I didn't have entrepreneurial upbringing. So it was just kind of this itch that was always in the back of my mind. And then at the age of 43, I was laid off for the first time. And that is what blew my mind. That was like, but I was following the safe script.
Right.
But I was doing what I was supposed to be doing. I was, working hard. I was getting promotions. I was the guy. How all of a sudden was my fate in somebody else's hands? So with some encouragement from my wife, I reluctantly, kicking and screaming, decided to start my own business. And all of a sudden, all these accidental stuff started happening to me. I never intended to be an entrepreneur. Now here I am 5 years into it. And I don't know how much we'll get into that today, but all the stuff that I planned to do didn't actually happen. Better stuff happened and continues to happen. And that's what really sparked my curiosity with accidental success.
It's a great story. And we're going to get to everything that you're doing. But I want to stay with this moment for a bit here, this time in your life where this all happened, right? Because this show is called The Break. And this is what I would call one of those break moments. So I want to sit here for a second and give people a window into Dennis's mind and heart at this time. So you said you had an itch. Talk to us a little bit about the things that you were feeling. You kind of said, is this it? But talk to us a little bit more about what that feeling is. What I want people to take away from this podcast is if they're sitting there feeling those same things that Dennis was feeling in this moment, I want them to be able to recognize that and then go do something about it.
For me, if I go back to like my childhood, I was always a high achiever, especially in school, straight A student, studied hard, always did well. So when I landed my first corporate job, I was a software developer, got my software engineering degree in university, excelled right away, soaked it all up like a sponge, and worked my way up pretty quickly into management because that was who I was. That's how I treated anything, right? eventually I got to this point where I'm like, okay, this is about as high as I think I want to go in a corporate world. I saw what CEOs or COOs were doing, and it consumed them. They had no life. Their life was work, and they had no family balance, if we bring that back in. So I didn't want what they had. I was happy with where I had landed on the corporate chart, which was more director type level, but everything else kind of seemed unfulfilling. Like, okay, well, what else then? I'm working for somebody else. I've kind of climbed as high as I want to work for somebody else and still remain my balance. Am I really living out my purpose? I don't think so. I'm working for somebody else. I'm working for their vision. I'm working for their mission. Is it aligning with my values? Mostly, but not 100%. So there's got to be something else, right? There's got to be more to my life than this. If this just continues on this trajectory for the next 20, 30 years, and I look back, am I going to be like, did I really fulfill my potential, my purpose? And the answer for me was no. But, well, what do I do about it? I don't know.
Right.
I never even thought about doing my own thing because I didn't have that entrepreneurial background. I just knew there was something there, and there was that itch that needed to be scratched.
So you bring up a really good point, which is like, I think a lot of people feel this way and don't know what to do. Like, don't have an idea of where to start, or it's all sorts of fears can creep in. Did you take any step? Like, number one, how did you get to this point? I mean, did you have like an active reflection period or process that you went through? Did you journal about this and your purpose? Like, when did this idea of purpose come into your life that you weren't fulfilling that?
I don't know if it was something I was actively journaling or maybe even super conscious about. I think it was more subconscious.
Yeah.
But I started to take note that whenever I was working for a company and we would bring in outside consultants, especially for things like strategy sessions, I would get a little envious because they would come in, everybody would just hang off their every word, right? Everything they said was gold. Oh my God, that was amazing what they said. And I could be like, I said the same thing in a meeting last week and nobody listened to me, right? So I started to get a little envious of their job. Hey, they get to go around and work with different companies. It's not that it's their mission. It's they're coming in and helping you figure out your mission. I'm an introvert. I am a problem solver. I'm an analytical thinker. I do enjoy workshops and facilitating and teaching. So I started to really feel like, oh, I wonder what it would be like to be on the other side of that table and do that. I had no idea how. I didn't know what that even, and I wasn't even sure if that's what I wanted to do, but I was starting to notice, I was a little envious of those people. So I think that's maybe where the seed started to get planted.
Yeah, it's kind of getting a little bit of a window or a view to an alternate way of working or living, or fulfilling that creative energy within you, or that creative need within you. Did you take any steps at all to start to explore anything, or did you just kind of let that sit with you and stew for a while?
Not until after the layoff. I never looked into it, never did anything about it. It was just this thing that was started to go off in my mind a little bit, but it was compartmentalized and not actioned on at all. So,
okay. And you were working in, it was at the insurance industry, basically. Is that correct?
At that time, yep. I was the director of the project management office at an insurance company. I was reporting into the CEO, and I built up this PMO. Okay.
And so you get laid off, which has happened. I've experienced it as well.
Yeah.
But you weren't really thinking of anything. And this was kind of the moment that slapped you in the face and got you to do something. So walk me through what that was like. Was it a complete blindside? How much did you have any type of runway or notice, or how did it actually happen?
Yeah, no, it came out of left field for me. Things were a little weird leading up to that. And I was thinking, what's kind of going on? And then it happened. I did get a nice severance package, so that was good. That gave me runway. But my initial thought, actually, because I was so indoctrinated into the script, was, oh, okay, well, tomorrow I'll go out and get another corporate job. I'll be right back in the game again. I'll have all this money that I can now invest because I got this severance package and everything will be fine. I'll be safe again. I'll be comfortable again. And it was my wife that kind of reminded me that, you've been having this itch. You've been talking about how you're envious of these consultants. I think you'd make a great consultant. I was like,
Wow.
Me? I don't think I could do that. Sure you can. You teach, you do workshops, you facilitate, you do it all the time within the company. Why can't you just do it on your own? I said, maybe I can. And I'll never forget, it was this one line she gave me, which was, we're going to be fine. You have a severance package, Dennis. I have a good job. Financially, we're fine. I want you to go and try and start your own consulting company and give it a full year. And if it works, amazing. If it doesn't work, you're never going to look back and have regrets. You're never going to look back and say, oh, I wish I had tried. I wish I had done that, because you did. And if it didn't work out, you'll know, okay, I gave it my best. So give it a full year. And that was 5 years ago. So
that is just amazing. Just a testament to the support, what the support from a spouse, family member, can do to just catapult you. Have you guys talked about this moment and reflected on this moment at all? Is there anything within her upbringing or outlook that you've pinpointed to that's different from yours that allowed her to give you that permission?
I had, and still do to a less extent, a real fear of the unknown. Mm-hmm. I'm not a risk-averse person, although I am more than I was 5 years ago. She's not a risk taker, but she doesn't have that same fear or that same anxiety. She's got this more, let's give it a try and see what happens. Still a good planner, still a good head on her shoulders, but that's more of her disposition. So she really had to help coach me out of that uncomfortable zone I was in and say, you can do this. What's the worst that's going to happen? Right. So that I think just because of that disposition, it really allowed me, it gave me that freedom to say, oh, you know what, I can give this a shot and go for it. So
she had kind of that little more openness to the upside of randomness, that there can be an upside of randomness.
Yeah, exactly.
That's really interesting because, again, I kind of started my career in finance. And so I learned a lot about this idea of risk and uncertainty, right? Can be kind of the same thing. And what I really learned is that the masters really understand there's two sides of risk. So there's one side, which is obviously the downside, which is what we associate with it most, right? When we hear the word risk, it's like, oh God, what bad is going to happen? But there's an upside as well. There's an upside to risk, to randomness, to volatility that we almost need to, we can't envision that. We have a really good idea of exactly what the downsides are. We can see those. Those are certain. It's like the certain uncertainty. And we have this really big, I think it's a creative problem. I don't think it's a fear. I actually think it's a creative, imagination problem of just being able to understand and visualize uncertainty and stepping into that. And I think that's where we are, like people like you and me are trying to sit. We're trying to sit in this planning world of, to take on entrepreneurship, you have to be able to understand downside and risk, and it's not as predictable, right?
Yeah.
But that those big things that you say will never happen, like getting fired at 43 years old, right? Those can happen.
Yeah.
But equally, something great can actually come out of it.
Yeah.
And that's the happy accident.
If I had stayed on that trajectory, which was I had plateaued, eventually I was going to come down, because you never plateau and then make no changes and go up, right? Once you've plateaued, if you don't make any changes, you're eventually coming down somehow, right? So because I decided to make a change, I've seen all these different upward things ever since, because now I'm changing constantly. I'm pivoting constantly. I'm taking some calculated risks constantly, and taking advantage of those happy accidents that come my way.
Yeah, I say like entrepreneurship is basically like this idea of like you're constantly rolling the dice. Like everything that you do is a micro experiment. And so I think that mindset helps you become more tolerant of failure and not seeing failure as failure, but seeing failure as learning and realizing that I just got to get back on the horse and like minimize that downside when I can.
Yeah.
So what was the first thing you did? So your wife tells you this, you're like, all right, I'm not going to get a new job. I'm going to try to figure it out. What was the first thing you did?
First thing I did was I did everything wrong. So I was extremely naive. I had no idea how to start a business. All of my corporate experience was more on the operations side. So I had no idea about branding, marketing, sales, anything like that. I was under this complete naive notion that I'll just create a company name, create a logo, spin up a website, announce to the world that I'm a consultant now, and then sit back and watch all the clients come rolling in. I honestly was thinking that's what was going to happen, right? So that's what I did. I spent the majority of my initial few weeks designing a logo, designing a website.
Yeah.
Hadn't even given any thought to, well, what type of services am I offering? Oh, I'm a business consultant. What do you need? Right? That was really how I built myself as this generalist, thinking, well, that'll get me more clients, right? Because I can do anything. I can do whatever you want. You want strategy, you want leadership training, you want the customer experience coaching, you want some innovation workshops. What do you need? Right? And because I kind of build myself as a jack of all trades, I appealed to nobody. And that's when I really had to start scratching my head going, okay, maybe I'm not as smart as I think I am. Maybe I actually have to learn how to start a business. Those 20 years of corporate experience didn't teach me anything about how to land a client. They just taught me what to do once I got one, right? So that's when I had to hit the books, get some mentors, get some training, and really start learning about spinning up a business.
Okay, so learning right off the bat. What mentors? What was your experience with mentors previous to that? Like, were you someone who has always used mentors, or were you like, man, you realized what you didn't know. How did you go about getting the right mentor for what you needed?
Yeah, it was confusing. So before that, I was always in a corporate role and my mentor would have been my boss. Right. But the type of mentorship I was getting was very specific to the role I was in and improving in the role I was in, or getting me ready for some sort of promotion. Well, none of that applied to starting a business, right? So I had to start looking around. I Googled, and let me tell you, if you're, looking for information on branding and marketing and sales, and there's an overwhelming amount of information out there. Originally, I thought, well, I'll just soak up what I can from the internet. I'll read some books, I'll watch some YouTube videos, and I'll be all set. But there's a million different conflicting ideas out there. Well, which ones are right? Which ones apply to me? And that's when I realized I need to find somebody who's doing something similar, but is a couple of steps ahead of me. Because that's the advice that I need. Somebody who's taken this exact same path. So I called up somebody that I knew that had started their own consulting business. They were a few years in now, was able to get some sessions with him, pick his brain. He pointed me to some other people, some other resources. And that's when things finally started to click for me.
What was it like? How did you land your first client? And what was that like?
Yeah. The first thing I did was start to go through my existing contacts, right? People buy from people they know, like, and trust. So if I was going to start from scratch with no relationships, it was going to take forever. So I thought, okay, people know me from my corporate role. I just need to let them know what I'm doing now. They've already got the relationship. They already know me. I just need them to trust me in something slightly different now. So that was how I landed the first few clients. people took, some chances on me, and I'm very thankful. And then from there, you ask for some referrals and some testimonials, and it's a very slow process in the beginning, but once the ball gets rolling, it starts to compound. But yeah, it was really tapping into some existing relationships.
So looking back, I think it's pretty clear to say that when you got fired, that was a really big happy accident. But I'm assuming at this point in your life, you didn't necessarily feel that way because you didn't have anything figured out. What was the next or first next happy accident where you started to really see like, wow, like I'm taking action and things are now happening?
Yeah.
What was that?
It's incredible. So the first few happy accidents originally look like negative things. Getting laid off. Oh boy, that looks like a negative. But like I show in my newsletter, a lot of success stories are actually born out of initial failures or traumatic experiences that jolt somebody in a different direction. So the second one would have been the pandemic. Okay. I was finally getting my consulting company figured out. I'd figured out my niche. I'd figured out my branding and my marketing and my messaging. I'd packaged my services into something that people found attractive. I was figuring out how to sell it. I now had a bunch of consulting engagements lined up, a bunch of workshops lined up. And then this thing called COVID hits. I'm not sure if you heard of it, but
a little bit. I'm a little familiar.
Yeah. It went around. So everything was put on hold. I think I just had one consulting engagement where they agreed to keep meeting with me over Zoom. At the time, I was doing all in-person consulting and workshops. So everything was like, okay, Dennis, sorry, time out. We got to put this on hold. We don't know what's going to happen with our business here. So I was like, man, what do I do now? Luckily, very similar to when I was laid off, I now had a nice nest egg again. Because I had figured out my consulting, I was able to do quite a bit of business right before the pandemic hit. So I had built up this nice nest egg financially to be able to ride out, this early storm. So I thought, okay, I've been dealt this time. I've got this money. What do I do with it? And one of the things, again, that I was a little envious of from other consultants was they had some sort of big name thing behind them. A lot of them had a book or an online course or something like that. And I thought, you know what? I'd love to write a book. So I reached out to a bunch of different fairly well-known authors, wanted to pick their brain. That was the one thing I learned, learn from somebody who's been there, done it ahead of you. I want to write a business book. I reached out to a bunch of authors who had written best-selling business books, had some great conversations. I sat down and wrote my book called The Zero In Formula. My consulting company was called Zero In. I took everything I had learned, packaged it together, showed my formula, had all these stories now from companies I had been consulting with. I worked with a great business book editor. She taught me a ton about good writing and editing, taught me how to market and publish my book. So that came out in September of 2020, right when the pandemic was starting to lift a bit. And here I was thinking, okay, my company's gone. I got to start over. It was on fire because my book came out right at the right time. I now had a good book behind my name, which is, great for your credentials and your cachet and credibility. It's now you're seen as the expert in that area because you got the book behind your name. Complete happy accident. If I had my wishes, it would have been no pandemic, and I would have just kept going the way I was going in my consulting. But now I'm getting booked on all these podcasts. All these new companies are getting to hear me talk, and they're reading my book, and now they're reaching out, and I'm doing all these international consulting engagements that I never would have had the exposure to do before. So I would say that was happy accident number 2. And then real quickly, the third one would have been when I first started Zero In. I thought, okay, I don't really have a social media presence. I had a LinkedIn account, but it was all just corporate connections, and I just used it as a resume. And I noticed some people were starting to post content. I thought, okay, I'm going to start posting content about me and my journey and how I'm starting this company and what I'm learning and what I'm doing. And I can post videos of me doing these workshops and, really building my brand. My hopes and my thinking was that I'm going to attract clients by doing that. What happened, which what didn't go to plan, was I started getting a bunch of individuals reaching out to me. Hey, Dennis, I want to start a company. I want to be a consultant. Can I pick your brain? So I was like, yeah, you know what? People paid it forward to me. I'll do a bunch of calls. I'll pay it forward to other people. Companies will start calling soon because of my LinkedIn content. Hey, this will work out. More and more of these individuals. Hey, I'm getting burnt out in my job. Hey, I got laid off. I want to do what you're doing. Hey, I saw you wrote a book. Can you teach me how to read a book or write a book? Can you teach me how to market my book? Hey, I see you got on all these podcasts. Can you teach me? And I was doing all these calls. And finally, it dawned on me, I got a whole other market here. I can coach other solopreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I sat down and wrote another book, The Accidental Solopreneur. And so I went again in a completely different direction. And okay, I'm going to focus on this new market. I'm still doing my business consulting, but I'm going to start this as my side hustle. I'm going to write a book for solopreneurs. I'm going to do courses. I created the Solopreneur Playbook course. I created the Author's Playbook course to teach people how to write and market a book. I started opening up my calendar for coaching calls. And the next thing you know, that's exploding. I'm like, I never planned that. That was never in my plan. It was just a complete accident that's what happened. And now I've got a whole brand going off in this direction around happy accidents and the accidental solopreneur. So it's just been a string of these chance encounters, happy accidents along the way.
So the second one that you talked about there in terms of the new market and the people, the solopreneurs and the people looking to start a business. I think this brings up a really interesting point about recognizing the opportunity.
Yes.
So can you talk to us a little bit about how that went for you? I'm assuming you had some, step one was you were completely oblivious to it because you were still focused on your thing.
Yes.
Step two was at some point you started to realize, okay, this could be a thing. And then step three was, okay, I have some signal that there's actually a market here.
Yeah.
Walk us through that.
Okay. I'm going to back up a little bit and just mention that what I have found, because I think I've written now 30 some editions of the Happy Accidents newsletter, which is me researching other people, products, companies that fell into something by accident and found all kinds of success out of it. By the time I got to about the 8th or 9th edition, I started noticing a pattern. Boy, they all sort of followed the same script. First, the person or the people they're not just sitting on the couch and then something amazing happens to them. They were out there. They were setting the stage. They were doing things. They had their own plans. They were meeting new people. They were trying new ideas. They were iterating. They were doing stuff. And then something completely unexpected happens. The happy accident. A chance encounter with somebody that sparks a new idea, some sort of accidental discovery or invention, something. And then to your point, the third thing was they had to capitalize on that now. They had to be open to it. They had to recognize it, and they had to be willing to take a bit of a risk and go in this new direction. So for me, it was first recognizing, a bunch of people are all asking you the same questions through DMs, through emails, through Zoom calls. I keep getting people wanting to pick my brain about writing a book and starting a business. I need to be open to the fact that I've got valuable experience and information that I can package and give to people. I can do that in a book. I can do that in a course. I can do that in coaching calls. Why didn't I see this earlier, right? So finally, I was open to it, recognized it, and then I had to take that leap and put it into action. Well, I'd already written a book, so I know what that's like. I can write another one. I'd already done an online course. I'll package another couple and put that together. I do consulting. That I can easily transition and do some coaching. So it was very easy for me to take what I had already learned, repackage it in a slightly different way to a different market, and just capitalize on it in that way.
I want to talk about the newsletter and some of the stories and all of that, but I do want to ask first, Do you have any, like, have you learned anything in terms of tips that would help people recognize or differentiate between an unexpected opportunity and, something that's just fleeting, I guess, right? Because there's two ways we could go at this. Everything is a sign, right?
Yeah.
And that, and then the other aspect of it is like, well, we're completely closed off. We're not open to anything. Nothing is a sign.
Yeah.
How do you decide what are some markers?
Yeah. It's really testing, right? For me, the markers were people kept asking me the same questions, right? So then what I coach people on now is exactly what I did. Okay, let me offer something for free, a free ebook, a free PDF, and see, are people willing to give their email to get that? Are people willing to sign up to get this? Very little skin in the game, but it's something.
Directionally.
Okay. Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. So people are, putting a tiny little bit of skin in the game to get something free. They're seeing a little bit of value in what I'm offering. Great. Now, what if I test giving something a little more valuable and asking for a little bit of money for it? A $20 book or a $50 course. Okay. If people are willing to pay for that, great. Now I think I've got something. If not, okay, great. So they saw a little bit of value, not enough to pay for it. Either I did a terrible job at marketing this thing, or it's just not something I'm going to put any more time into. So that's how I kind of test ideas. Will they subscribe or trade their email for something for free? And will they pay a little bit of money for something? And if there's something there, I'll continue to build it out. If not, great. I haven't wasted any more time or effort or money on it. But at the same time, you can't really do that with every idea.
Right.
You still have to kind of decide, okay, is this something I think I would enjoy doing? So for me, is there passion in this? Will I find this rewarding? And do I think there is enough of a market out there? Can this scale? Like, am I going to only be able to do this for 10 people? Or could this scale into something where I can package it and sell it to thousands or millions of people if I want to? And if the answer to both of those is yes, then it's probably worth testing, right?
Yeah. Okay. So that makes sense. There's got to be some type of filter to filter out ideas. I always think about, because I kind of am a lateral thinker, I think pretty wide. So I always have a lot of ideas. And I always find being comparative, it really helps. So like when I've done corporate consulting, people always wanted like, oh, well, what's the one project that we're going to do? And how are we going to map out this plan? And I was always like, why don't we split them up and try like 3 different versions of that? Because you're going to very quickly, because you can compare them, see which one is better. So that's how I always think about it. Anything else? I love the question that you ask about, like, just being like, what are people asking me? What are the questions that I'm getting all the time? Like, that's a huge signal.
And now that I've built up a bit of an audience on LinkedIn, I'll use LinkedIn as a way of testing it. I'll throw an idea out there. Do a bunch of people start commenting? Do they start asking questions? Oh, I think I've hit something. If not, okay, I won't invest any more in that, right? Because I know I've built up an audience of people who are interested in what I do and what I have to say. It's a great testing ground.
Where my head goes next is like, do you have metrics like that you think about in terms of testing things? So the example that you gave, right? Okay, I spin up a free PDF, I market it in some way, and people respond. They give me their email. That might be one person, that might be 50 people. How do you think about that?
Yeah, without an audience, now you have to figure out, well, how do I get in front of those people if they're not already following me? Do they subscribe to another newsletter? Can I sponsor that newsletter? If it's going to cost me maybe $100 to put an ad in another newsletter and see how many hits I get, maybe that's worth $100 and see, right? if I know it's the right audience who are there for the right reason, and they're going to hopefully resonate with what I'm giving away or selling, that's an easy way to test, right? Are there groups? Are there events? Are there conferences that you can go to where these people are already going, who are interested in what you have to say? So if you haven't built your own audience, there's still a way to get in front of those people and borrow somebody else's audience.
And then in terms of like response rate, right? Like, so you're doing that, good idea versus bad idea, that's
Right.
5 out of 1,000 people. Is that,
Right.
500 out of 1,000?
Yeah. Then you really have to have some comparative metrics. Like you said, if you're starting from scratch, you get nothing to compare it against unless you're able to find somebody else's stats on if they ran a similar test. For you, you got to start building that up. Okay. So I'll do tests with my newsletter now. What if I change the subject line and start doing it a bit differently? Does that increase the open rate or not? What if I present this sponsor in a different way this week? Does that increase the click-through rate? So I'm doing all kinds of tests because now I've built up some metrics of, well, I know historically the percentage of people that would open these emails and click on these emails, and the percentage of people that would then download my free ebook that came with it. And so I'm always testing different ways to present the same information and see if that makes a difference. So.
Got it. Yeah. And I guess I would just on a build in terms of, I'm thinking of people who are just trying to start out with this process. I would say, like, if you follow what Dennis is saying and you get even 1 or 2 people to, sign up, let's say, which is very little skin in the game.
Yep.
It can be a blessing because you can actually get more information from them. Like, you can, if it's 500 people, it's way harder to get, one-on-one conversations with them, but you can start up a conversation, get way more detailed information from just a handful of people. So I would say, like, that's the next step. And then, once you start to get more people in there, yes, you can totally start to zero in and do the comparative metrics thing and the A/B testing stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. So you kind of had revenue streams, I would say, before you built a newsletter. A lot of people do it the opposite way.
Right.
Or that's at least how a lot of people are talking about it these days.
Right.
So how did you, and obviously your brand is kind of built around this happy accidents thing. I love the premise of your newsletter because it's taking real world examples and showing exactly how this maps out. How did you get to that point in terms of thinking about or landing on that as a premise for a newsletter?
Yeah. It's funny. It's another accident, but when I wrote the book, The Accidental Solopreneur, I think the working title I had for it when I was writing it was something like Going Solo or something like that. The premise was this person's leaving corporate and they're betting on themselves, and here's the journey they go through. It's a fictional parable. It's kind of my story, but more fictionalized. And then I've got all these lessons throughout it. But I had, I think, maybe a dozen people beta read the book because I wanted their feedback. I just wanted to kind of test. And one of the questions I asked people was, what do you think the title should be? I didn't include a title at the time. And a few different people came up with similar titles around this accidental part. They really picked up on the part that this guy wasn't intending to do this. He kind of fell into it. Oh, yeah. And I think one person actually gave the title, The Accidental Solopreneur. And I went, oh, I kind of like that. That wasn't my intention when I wrote the book. So I went back and I updated the script a bit to kind of accentuate the accidental part of it a little more. And when the book came out, people were loving it. Oh, I love the title. I love the fact I started calling myself The Accidental Solopreneur. That's became my title on my profile. Oh, I love your title. That's really resonating. I fell into it. I did this. Oh, did you hear about this person? Did you hear about this product? Oh, this happened by accident. Did you know this was invented by accident? Oh, whoa, this is really taken off. I had no idea. So I started researching some of these stories that people were giving me. Did you know Play-Doh was invented by accident? Did you know the Slinky was invented? Did you know Post-it notes were invented? So I started researching these stories and I thought, you know what? I'm going to write a story every week on LinkedIn. I'm just going to give the long form. Here's the history of how this thing happened by accident. And I would call it Another Happy Accident. And I'd have a picture of the product and I'd say it was a happy accident and I'd say what happened. And how the person was open to it and recognized this thing and then took advantage of it and built it into this big thing. People were loving those posts. They were blowing up. They were getting the more impressions and engagement than all my other posts. And that's where I was like, oh my goodness, the conventional wisdom is take your audience offline when you can, because you have no idea who's going to see that post when you put it out there. This is my newsletter. I had been putting off starting a newsletter, and I thought, man, there's already so many out there. How many people want another Justin Welsh, Josh Spector? Here's all my tips and tricks. Here's how I built my business. You know, I don't know if I want to write another one of those. I stories, and I can play off this accidental success angle, and people are loving them on LinkedIn. So that means they're probably going to love them if I write them in a newsletter. So 1 week after about my 5th or 6th post, because I had been doing them every Tuesday morning, I just said, by the way, from now on, if you want these stories, subscribe here. They're only coming in the Happy Accidents newsletter. And I think before my first one came out, I already had like 150 subscribers. So I was like, okay, this tells me there's something here. So from there, the Happy Accidents newsletter was born.
I love that. It's such a good example of just keeping your ear, listening to what is coming back to you, not overthinking things, just listening to the response and then going with that, surrendering to it and going in that direction.
Yeah. Little bit of testing, being open to what they're telling you and then running with it. So
I'm kind of trying to do something similar with this show. So I bought, in 2017, I bought the site careercloud.com. It had this podcast on it, and it was a lot about tips and tricks, resume and interviewing tips and stuff, which I just, I find it's very important. As a topic, I find it kind of boring. And I was just trying to figure out what do I want to talk about?
Yeah.
And what resonates with people. And this idea of being dynamic and changing what you do and changing your path, and then sitting within the moments that those happen and trying to bring those stories out of what people were feeling with it's over and over, right? We're fearful. We're afraid. We don't know what's going to happen, but we find the courage to take a step anyway, and then another step.
Yep.
And I think that the repetitiveness of those stories, it's similar to the Happy Accidents because they're all over the place. And then you see these examples of people who, like speaking of Justin Welsh, right? Like in a kind of corporate startup environment, been fired, and now all of a sudden he just chooses himself and has a massive audience and is basically the leader of the solopreneur journey.
Yeah. I actually interviewed him for the newsletter because he's a perfect example. Even when he started on writing on LinkedIn, it wasn't about LinkedIn.
Right.
It was about how to grow a SaaS company. And he called himself Justin SaaS. But he got so good at copywriting and he got so good at attracting people, he started getting a ton of people saying, hey, how are you doing that? How are you getting so many impressions on your posts? How are you getting so many followers? And then he recognized that and pivoted and went in that direction. But never his intention. It was a happy accident that it even went down that road.
Yeah, it's just such an amazing story. I think it's I think it's a great premise. And it's something that you're going to get a different story every time that oh man, I didn't know that. So it's fantastic. Now, one of something that you've learned from writing these is kind of like the 5 things that these happy success stories really all have in common. And so this is one of my scripted questions, just because I think it's so interesting. Over 300 hours of researching, the 5 are basically curiosity, courage, persistence, opportunistic, and focus. And I think this is where people get stuck with this balance of how am I open and continue to get going on. So talk to me a little bit about curiosity.
So this is in that setting the stage part, right?
Yeah.
If you're just like, hey, I've come up with my 5-year business plan and I'm just going to stick to my plan. I got my head down and I'm not open to the signals, you're going to miss out on a ton. Like we said off the top, nothing goes to plan. You're going to go through your business plan. You're going to go through those steps. And at the end, you're going to be probably sadly disappointed. you need to be curious. I wonder what happens if I try X instead.
Mhm.
I wonder what happens if I pull this lever. I wonder what happens if I say this today. I wonder what happens if I try that little thing. So continue to be curious. You don't have to go way outside of your plan, or you don't have to go way outside your niche, but play around. Read books from different perspectives. Try things you might not have tried before. Maybe partner with somebody who has a different perspective on something and bring something else. But be curious to look for different ways to look at things in different ways, right? So that would be the curiosity mindset. And when you do that, and this is what I talk about quite a bit in the newsletter, what happens is you start to, what I call, increase your luck surface area, right? If you got the blinders on and you're not being curious and you're just focused on what you want to get done and your goals, you're missing out. If you're meeting new people, if you're testing things, if you're trying new things, you're increasing that surface area now of ways that luck, happy accidents, serendipity can find you. And it just creates a whole new playing field for you.
Yeah, I think curiosity is a skill that you can practice. Like we get locked into what we do. And so we need to actually practice that. And just by asking more questions and being curious, you're completely opening yourself up.
And it can be as simple. When I used to do innovation workshops, the smallest things can get you outside of your routine, right? Our brains are lazy. They like to find the easiest, most simple route to get from A to B, right? And easy show of hands. And when I was doing like a live workshop, I would say, how many people took the same route here today as you always? Yeah, that's my route to work. Great. How many people have always parked the exact same parking spot? Because day one, when you started with this company, you pulled into the parking spot and went, where am I going to park? Right there. And from that day forward, that's my parking spot. Even though it's not assigned, that's your comfort level. I look for that spot every time. We're creatures of habit. But what happens is our brains get lazy then. The synapses don't have to fire. We don't have to think. We don't have to get creative. So take a different route to work. Watch a movie you wouldn't normally watch. Talk to somebody you wouldn't normally talk to. Read a book you wouldn't normally read. If you just start doing some of these curiosity things, the synapses start firing again. New ideas happen. Luck surface area gets created and good things happen.
Excellent. So I think a lot of people are saying, all right, I'm on board with that. But the next one is courage, and I'm just not courageous. So how does that play out in your mind?
So this is that willingness. Once you see an opportunity land in your lap that you didn't expect, most people will go, well, that's not on my plan. Mm-hmm. I'll ignore that. Or that seems a bit risky. I won't go that route. Or I probably don't have the experience to do that. I'll shove that aside. Even though they might even recognize that's a great idea or that's a great opportunity. They'll find reasons to say, but not for me. Mm-hmm. It takes a little bit of courage to go, what if I did try that?
Yeah.
Kind of like my wife nudging me to go, well, what if you did try and start your own business and gave it a year? Me? Yeah, you. Right? It took some courage for me to listen to her and say, yeah, you know what? I'm going to try. Now, this is not to say to people out there, just go try whatever you want, even if you don't have the skills or the whatever.
Right.
Spend all your money starting up. No, it's not that. It's I'm going to have the courage to try. I'm going to have the courage to say, you know what? I'm going to try and learn a little bit about that. I'm going to maybe get some mentoring. I'm going to take some action. I'm going to test, but I'm going to try. Right? It doesn't have to be putting all your cards on the table and saying I'm all in, but I'm going to be a little bit in. I'm going to try this out.
Yeah. And I think understanding sort of your options in terms of risk management too, right? Like chunking that down to a level where it doesn't feel so bad to take that risk.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, big deal. One post. Okay. Nobody's really watching anyway. That kind of thing.
Yep.
I think really helps people get over that courage aspect.
Yep.
All right. 3 is persistence. No such thing as an overnight success. Be prepared to play the long game. I love that term. I use it all the time. The long game. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, I think we've just become conditioned, right? In society these days, it's the instant gratification. I blame the microwave. It's actually one of my happy accidents newsletters. The invention of the microwave was an accident, but that started fast food. Now we can cook our food in 30 seconds, and everything's become so instant. We've almost expect that now. And with social media, there's instant gratification.
Yeah.
Well, if I'm starting a business, well, then I want to see revenue and I want to see this thing working within a month or two. It doesn't work that way in business. It takes a while to build a brand. It takes a while to build awareness. It takes a while to build up a customer base. It takes a while to figure things out. It takes a while to test. So you have to go in with, if I'm going to have the courage to try this idea, and I'm going to just at least commit to step one, know that it's not going to pay off immediately. Know that this is probably going to be a long-term play. So don't give up after a month, right? And my wife was the perfect example again. Dennis, give it a full year before you decide to pull the plug on this.
Yeah,
right? She knew right off the bat. Yeah.
Very, very unique to be given the time frame too. I mean, yeah. I think that's, it's one thing to be encouraged, but to have that time frame, I think that's another level and a testament to your wife. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
4 is opportunistic. Just recognize. We kind of talked about recognizing it, but talk to us a little bit about being opportunistic.
Yeah, I hear a lot of people, especially on social media, say, "Oh, that person was just lucky. That would never happen to me." Want to bet? Are you sure? I'm pretty sure you've had all kinds of opportunities land in your lap and you ignored them.
Right.
Right. Opportunities come to all of us. In fact, I'm hosting an event next month called the Solo Creator Summit. Complete accident. A guy who's now my co-founder reached out to me on Twitter. We just started chatting, asked him what he did. Oh, I started an event called Culture Summit. It's for HR professionals, built it up. It became quite big and I sold it. I got a nice exit package. Now I'm just thinking about what else I want to do. Oh yeah, well, what are you thinking? Well, I might do another summit. This time, I think the creator economy's taken off. I'm like, yeah, I'm really noticing that as well. I've got a newsletter. I've got it. Oh yeah, you'd be good for that. And they're like, oh, well, yeah, maybe that's something we could do together. But if that was me 5 years ago, it would have been, oh, you're on a different path than me. I never would have even recognized that that's an opportunity I could take with him and be like, oh, that sounds cool. Let me know how it goes. I'm going this way.
Right.
So being opportunistic.
You're the zero-in consultant.
Yes.
Yeah.
Being opportunistic is, could I do that? Does it fit? Can I at least test it? Can I try that out? And that's exactly what him and I are doing. This first event that we're doing is a test. We have no budget, but we were able to convince a great lineup of speakers. We're getting all kinds of people signing up and we're just seeing how this one goes. And then, hey, can we turn it into something bigger next time? But if you don't take that opportunity and you just turn them all down, you're going to be like, well, how come that guy's lucky and I'm not? Right? They took the opportunity.
So a really good time to talk about who is this summit for and what are you trying to accomplish? What are the logistics like? Just to let our audience kind of know if they want to tune in and find out more, talk to us about that real quick right here.
Yeah, it's really for any solo creator. So you have a podcast, you have a newsletter, you have a YouTube channel, you're building an audience on Twitter and you're creating courses, whatever. These talks are from people who have been there. And that, like I said, right off the top, that's what I knew I needed when I was starting Zero In. I needed to learn from somebody who's a few steps ahead of me. So we brought in a great lineup of people who've built audiences. They've built podcasts, they've grown newsletters, and each of them are going to give their secrets, their tactics on here's what worked for me. And so you're getting to learn right from the people who are doing what you want to do and have found some success. And we're just hoping thousands of people can really benefit from this.
And this is virtual. Is there a cost to it? Like how is this working?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, completely virtual. Initially, it was going to be one day, September 20th. We've had so much great reaction. We added a second day and we found a bunch of more great speakers. So now it's September 20th and 21st. It's completely free if you want to join live. If you do want access to the recordings, either you can't be there live or you want to go back and rewatch stuff, you can pay $67 to have access to all the recordings.
Excellent. Very cool. Yeah, that sounds amazing. I'm definitely going to be there because we've talked about it a little bit. So this is what I love. I mean, it's one of your, being opportunistic, right? Gives you the wherewithal to see this as an opportunity.
Yeah.
What you said about it, which is a good filter, is, can I do this? Does it fit? Those are two unbelievable questions and insightful questions to minimize this whole shiny object syndrome, option overload. I always talk about option overload type thing. Those two things make so much sense and kind of bleed into your last bit about focus.
Yes.
With these stories.
Yeah, 100%. If I was going to do this, I knew I had to stop doing something else.
Right.
Anything you say yes to means you're going to probably have to say no to something else. So I've gotten to the point where I'm now ramping down zero in.
Okay.
I just finished a contract. I'm not taking any new ones. I'm purely focused right now on solopreneur coaching and the Solo Creator Summit. If I was to try and continue to do zero in and do the business consulting at the same time, I'd be doing a terrible job at trying to launch this Solo Creator Summit. I wouldn't be giving it the focus that it deserves. But I had to make that choice. Am I okay with shutting down zero in? Am I okay with putting the focus on the Solo Creator Summit? And the answer for me was yes, because I'm starting to see so much more business pickup on my solopreneur coaching side that's where I want to direct more of my focus, ramping down business consulting, working more with solo creators and solopreneurs, so that summit fits in perfectly.
One of the other things I read that you have put out there is, I'm not going to get it exactly right, but essentially make your future self proud and sort of optimize for this regret minimization, this has been a guiding light in my decision-making process since I turned 40 and had 3 kids and all this kind of stuff. Talk to us about the role of that statement in your life and how it affects your decision-making and how you filter through some of these opportunities that come to you.
I'm probably going to sound very repetitive here, but again, it goes back to that conversation with my wife,
right?
Where it was like, give it a full year. And if it doesn't work, you won't have any regrets. You'll know you tried. But if you don't even try, you're going to regret it. You're going to look back when you're 60, 70 years old and go, I wish I had tried that. I wonder what would have happened. Would I have been successful? Would I have enjoyed it? I don't know. So I'm going to regret it. So anytime I'm faced with something now, some sort of decision, some sort of opportunity, besides will it fit? Can I give it the focus? That other lens is, am I really going to regret this if I don't try it? And if there's a strong urge in me that says, yeah, you're probably going to regret this if you don't try this one, then I need to figure out how to say yes to it, meaning I got to figure out what else to say no to. So it's just another lens to look at it through.
Had you thought much about this idea of regret until she said that to you?
No, I was just living on this script, living this safe, comfortable path. And now I wish I had started earlier. Right. So, but I'm so thankful that I'm not having these regrets. Now it's like, man, I've written books. I've been on all these podcasts. I've consulting for all these companies. I've coached all these people. Like I've written a newsletter that people are loving. Like if I hadn't have done these things, I would definitely regretted it.
Yeah. It's just another sort of really tiny example of how a different perspective can shatter the way you look at yourself and completely break, some of your mental constructs and just release you on this other path.
100%.
All right, man. This has been amazing. I've got a couple of just last minute rapid fire questions.
Sure. All right.
And we'll make sure we have all of the links of how to find you and everything you're up to in the show notes and all that. But I just got a couple of rapid fire questions to close us out. But I've had so much fun. I could probably talk to you for the rest of the afternoon. Rapid fire number one. Is there a recent author, thought leader, or influencer that you've come across that has really caught your attention?
Yeah, I just recently read the book Mastering Uncertainty, and it's by Matt Watkinson.
That's right up my
this
alley.
time. Yeah, he's written a few books that I've really enjoyed. So when this one came out, and I chatted quite a bit on LinkedIn, it came out and I was like, oh, this book was written for me. It's all about serendipity. It's all about chance. It's all about how do you capitalize on this stuff. This is right up my alley. So yeah, great book, Mastering. It's actually co-authored, Matt Watkinson and I'm going to botch this guy's name, Chaba Konkoli, I think is how you pronounce it. But yeah, terrific book.
That's amazing. I'm definitely getting that one. Number two, happy accidents, chance encounters, and serendipitous moments have played a major role in the success of many famous individuals and companies, as we've talked about. What is your favorite happy accident moment from the newsletter that you've done?
I have a few. So when it comes to products, I would probably say the game CrossNet. That's that one that's kind of 4-square volleyball.
Oh, yeah.
So I interviewed the CEO, and just the way that they kind of came up with that, the way it came together, such an amazing story. And then the success that they're seeing because of that, and the growth is just incredible. So there's a happy accidents newsletter about that. When it's about people, my favorite one would probably be the story of Elton John and Bernie Taupin, who are this amazing songwriting duo, and the fact that they met and came together because they both responded to the same ad in the newspaper from the record company who was looking for songwriters. Never knew each other, never worked with each other. They both came in. One was really good at writing lyrics. The other one was really good at writing music. The record company said, why don't we try and throw these guys together? And here they are, mega hits 40 years later, all because of this chance encounter. So amazing story. That's
amazing. I'm definitely going to go read both of those. All right. Next one. Biggest lesson that you've learned along your journey of breaking from one path to another and following your happy accident moments. Biggest lesson.
Yeah. Biggest thing for me is getting past that fear of the unknown. It's still something I deal with to probably a less extent than I did before, but it'll still come up, and my wife will look at me and she's like, "You're doing it again. Like, have some faith, trust, take a leap, right? Like, what's going to happen? You had this same fear 2 years ago, and everything's fine.
Yeah,
go for it, try it." So.
My next one was going to be, what's the biggest barrier that you see prevents you? But I think you just answered that.
Yeah, same thing. Yeah.
Your fear of the unknown.
Yeah.
All right. There's, a lot of negativity in the world, but I want to know what's got you excited about the next 12 months.
I think just seeing what's going on in the solo creator economy. Twitter is now paying creators. There's more ways to monetize. For me, a newsletter just used to be a way to stay in front of my audience. Now I'm selling sponsorships in my newsletter. There's just so many opportunities out there. And I think companies are getting more flexible and agreeable for their employees to have side hustles and having a personal brand. It's just really exploding. So I just love the way that it's going right now.
Excellent. All right. He is Dennis Geelen. He's got courses. He's got books. He's got summits he's doing and newsletters and content online. Dennis, tell us where people can find more about you and get access to all the great things that you're doing.
Sure. Yeah. So for me, if you want to get in touch with me or see what I'm doing, best way is my website. So that's just dennisgeelen.me. I'm always open to connecting with people on LinkedIn. So look me up there. If you're interested in the summit, it's just solocreatorsummit.com, and you can see the lineup, you can see the speakers, and you can grab a free ticket there.
Excellent. We will make sure we have all of that in the show notes for everybody to access really easily. Dennis has been amazing. I'm so happy we got connected serendipitously online, by the way.
Exactly.
Serendipitously. It was an accident, but I consider that I have a new friend and ally in this fight. So I really appreciate getting to know you. Thanks for bringing all of your wisdom to our audience, and I can't wait to talk to you again soon.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks so much for having me.